It's a very moving story about a future society where you just can't have children without getting a license from the government. Its circumstances have really changed. Technology has increased to an extent that most normal work is performed by robots. And in this society, we are confronted with the idea of programming a child robot so that he is able to love.
Ready?
This is a seed idea.
I propose that we build a robot who can love.
Mommy!
Go anywhere but that way or they'll catch you.
No, Mommy, please.
We run now.
You're a machine.
I'm a boy. My name is David.
Well, my involvement in AI came about simply because my friend Stanley Kubrick told me a story that he was developing about artificial intelligence. And it was a story that was very close to his heart. For the first time in the 18 years I knew Stanley, he was taking me sort of into his creative confidence on a project. He never brought me into his confidence on Full Metal Jacket or on The Shining, but for some reason on AI, he felt that I was a little simpatico to that subject. Stanley began talking to me about it in the mid-1980s. And in the mid-1990s, he actually called me again. We had talked many, many times during those 10 years. And then one day he said, I think I have a great idea. I produce it, you direct it. And I kind of took me back. I didn't quite understand what he meant by that. And I said, what, you mean you want me to direct the movie you were going to direct? And he said, yeah, I'll produce it for you to direct.
While Stanley was alive, he said, this is actually a film that should be directed by Steven Spielberg. He appreciated Steven's different talent very, very much, and he saw all his films.
Steven installed a fax machine in his closet at home, and he and Stanley faxed each other directly. Any notes about the script, any comments, you know, nothing went through me, or there were no copies in the office. Steven basically served as his own assistant for this project, and Stanley was the exact same way.
We actually spent 2 months going over all of his storyboards, almost 1,000 storyboards he had already done on the film, and a 90-page treatment that he had supervised based on the short story Super Toys Last All Summer Long by Brian Aldiss, and then the screen story by Ian Watson, which Stanley had pretty much worked on with Ian.
Tell me, what is love?
It was a great opportunity, and I wouldn't have responded in the positive if I hadn't really thought it was one of the nicest stories I had ever heard. I mean, the story that Stanley told me was a beautiful, contemporary, albeit future fairy tale.
I like your floor.
And I thought it had a gentle heart, and it was also had extreme kind of, you know, elasticity about the project. It went from the domestic, the gentle, a mother and a son, and the relationship between mothers and sons, to suddenly an odyssey, an adventure that takes you into the darkness of an unspecified future time when robots and man are at the brink of civil war. And then returns you to a dream, a wish that this robot child, David, makes at the very outset of our story.
Are you her?
And it was a story that I thought was a perfect story for Stanley. Stanley kept saying, this is the perfect story for you. We went back and forth like that until I finally just said, I think you should do it, Stanley, and I'll produce it for you if you'd like. And Stanley said, no, that's okay. If you don't want to direct it, I'll do it.
When Stanley passed away, his widow contacted Steven and basically said, you know, this film will never see the light of day unless you make it. And it was just like a gift had fallen in Steven's lap.
And I said yes, first because it was a wonderful story, and second because it was a way for me to honor Stanley.
And we basically, from that point forward, any other project went on the back burner, and we were all about making artificial intelligence.
You got it, cut.
And cut, great.
He was attracted to it because it embodied many of the things that he had explored with, obviously, E.T. and Close Encounters. But I think this, in many, many ways, takes Steven several more steps, because Stanley Kubrick is bringing something to this project. And Steven wanted to embrace that and pay homage to that. And so he took Stanley's contribution and then added that to his own. Once he found out that this might be a project he would do, it was a project that he had spent so much time thinking about, that to sit down with a writer and start talking about what he wanted that writer to do, he began to realize it might be better if he just tried to do it himself.
I've done a lot of writing that I haven't taken credit for in the intervening years between Close Encounters, Poltergeist, and now. I haven't stopped writing. I don't sit down and do entire screenplays, but I do a lot of collaborative, the stuff that directors often do in close associations with certain writers. Don't do it all the time, but I've been very involved in writing, or at least in collaborating with writers on most of my directed films. So this wasn't unusual for me to write it, but the story was unusual and so personal to Stanley that I thought it would lose Stanley's personal ideals if I had to recommunicate his ideas through me to yet another party. And I just thought it would, you know, kind of preserve the purity of what Stanley wanted to achieve and the story he wanted to tell if I just bit the bullet and wrote it myself.
I read Steven's script and I was completely enthusiastic about it, because he did one thing. He used the script as it was, in principle, without really changing it drastically. But he made hundreds of changes, nevertheless, and really improved it. And Stanley would have loved it. The film script that I read by Steven is very, very much in his spirit. That gave me great joy.
There were enormous challenges facing this project because this is a journey, and because it's a fairy tale, and because it takes place in the future. Nothing really exists, so everything had to be designed and fabricated and invented by Steven. And then the process of communicating that to all these different people in all these different departments is really what the challenge of producing is all about.
Very nice.
You found a fairy tale.
I love you.
Action, Francis. I sort of learned a long time ago to be careful about detailing what motivates me to tell a story as if it's some tremendous thought process that takes years to figure out first emotionally and internally, and then to be able to turn around and tell you the story that I worked so hard to figure out whether I wanted to tell at all. And I realized that it's all the decisions I make about the stories I tell are intuitive decisions. I either spark to a story or I don't. And in this case, when Stanley first told me about AI and let me read The Treatment in 1984, I immediately said to Stanley, this is the best story you've ever had to tell. And I felt that in 1984. And I think that gave Stanley encouragement to continue to pursue the project even further.
I was.
I wish he had lived to tell this story. I would much rather have seen this movie from Stanley Kubrick, but when I had the opportunity to make the picture, I thought I would satisfy my own urge to simply want to tell a good story, and such as this is. And at the same time, to be able to say, this is for my pal Stanley Kubrick.
Goodbye, Joe.
Goodbye, David.